All right, so I think we're at the minute past the hour, so without any further ado, again, welcome to today's conversation about how you can use micro internships to engage employers. If we haven't met before, my name is Kristen Schrader, and it's my privilege to lead the partnerships team here at Parker Dewey. Every one of my colleagues, Danielle, Annie, and again, you've met, probably received some emails from us here and there, but we all come from career services. I know my personal journey started in HR and then went to higher ed. I always wanted to focus on what are students going to do with these wonderful degrees that they're working so hard to get. And in my work in higher ed and career services supporting students, like you, my colleagues and I, we're all focused on the students and wanting to help them go from college to career as easily as possible, but also to provide them some amazing opportunities. And that's why it's such an honor to partner with so many of you to provide these opportunities to your students. But that being said, there's the other side of the house, which are the employer partners. And I know many of you are in touch with organizations, large, small, and everything in between, and trying to figure out how do we best support the employers who want to work with your students. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. How can you utilize micro internships as yet another tool in the toolbox to be able to support your students? And the great news about this is by sharing micro internships with your employers, you're doing two things. You are supporting your students because you're curating more opportunities for the students that you wanted to and are there to support. But you're also helping those employers because many of them, I'm going to bet, either have never heard of micro internships before or don't have a comprehensive understanding of how they can use micro internships to help fill their talent pipeline to be able to address their early career recruiting goals. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So super excited to have you join us today. So please keep the chat flowing with whatever questions are top of mind as we work through today's content. But yes, we're going to record it. Yes, we'll share the slides in case you have to hop early or you want to share this with others on your team who may not have been able to join us today. All right, so without any further ado, I just want to set the stage because I recognize some of you might be intimately familiar with micro internships, but for many of you, you might need a little bit of a refresher. Totally understand. We're having this conversation in early November, and I remember my time in higher ed in the fall and how busy it is in that weird time between career fairs wrapping up and whatever the winter semester or winter term might be bringing. So recognizing that, here's a quick refresher on how and what Parker Dewey is. So our platform solely focused on these micro internships. But micro internships themselves can be used in a wide variety of ways. Most effectively, they are used as a recruiting tool. Having these projects be an opportunity for students to put to work what they're learning in the classroom, and for companies, for them to see those students in action so that they can go from micro intern to intern or even hired on full time. That is the ultimate goal. And that is what we are seeing with organizations like the ones with the logos at the bottom of the slide, how companies are using that project as a way to access, engage, assess, and ultimately hire early career talent. Because think about the students that are not being well served by traditional recruiting methods, the ones that couldn't come to the career fair, the ones that were filtered out of whatever jobs they've been applied to because maybe their GPA isn't quite meeting the mark for what employers are excited to see, or their major isn't attractive based on the roles that they're interested in. With a micro internship, the students who have these challenges can get in front of these organizations and work with these organizations and get paid experiential learning opportunities and get hired by these companies. So just to recap, what are micro internships? Short-term, paid professional projects. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with those three components, but those are key. The other thing I want to emphasize is the flexibility of this. Organizations are using micro internships year round, posting these projects on demand. So if you think about the companies who worked with your students this summer, they had their summer internship programs, great. This is something that for organizations can provide them that support that an intern can do, but can provide it year round. Think about, for example, those organizations who don't have summer internship programs. Maybe they're too small, but they're growing. Maybe they're a nonprofit that doesn't have the budget to fund an internship program. Maybe they have some budget, but maybe can't provide the support that an intern might require. Maybe these are organizations who have robust internship programs, but still have recruiting challenges. These are all pockets of organizations that hopefully come to mind as I start mentioning these things, because they are ones that can be very well served by a micro internship. So some key things to emphasize, though, is that this is not designed to replace any of the other recruiting things that they're doing, but these are designed short-term, 10 to 40 hours completed by the student. But they're all projects with a fixed deliverable, so not something that replaces a full-time person, an intern, or a part-time person. They all have this start and end, very specific deliverable time frame. They're all paid. Why? Well, because it's fair and because that makes it accessible and it's the right thing to do. These are all real-world projects, and our philosophy here at Parker Dewey is if the students are being asked to do real work, they should be fairly compensated. But we also recognize that that in itself, how do I pay a student, can be a major lift, a major burden for many organizations, which is why Parker Dewey does the payment for them. So the cost of the micro internship, 90% goes to the student. The 10% that Parker Dewey retains covers our costs of administering the project. The legal costs, the IT, the tax forms, all that stuff we take care of and is covered in that 10%. And by the way, there's no cost to creating an account on Parker Dewey for an employer. There's no cost to post a project. We only invoice the companies once they select a student. Just a few little parameters that I wanted to make sure were clear. Now, these are designed to be professional projects. Again, similar to what a student would do as an intern or in their first job after college, but posted year round. These are projects that, again, keep it very, very simple and easy for these organizations. So that being said, why are students doing this? Well, I'm sure you have many ideas, but in what you hear from students, but they like the fact, and what we hear is the flexibility, the accessibility, the fact that it's something that they can do without having to give up all the other stuff that students have to do. So they can do a micro internship and also take a heavy course load. They can do a micro internship and also be a student athlete. They can do a micro internship and do research or study abroad or work or whatever else they might have going on. But the other key thing I want to emphasize is that they're doing it all 4 years, that they're doing it in conjunction with other experiential learning in some cases, and they're doing it and getting hired long-term for internships, full-time roles, et cetera. So there's all this still philosophically the same thing that we all want students to do, but it's they're getting hired. This is more than just a project for them. They have all these different benefits in addition to this chance for something that could turn longer term, just like any other internship. And what we're hearing from students is that the impact of these micro internships is very real. When we evaluate the students and ask them point blank in the post micro internship survey, what is the impact of the experience on, based on the NACE career readiness competencies? And you can see it's a very, very positive experience for these students, and they're building and improving in all of these different areas. But the one that gets me most excited is this no change, but I built confidence. Because for many students, we're seeing that micro internships are a really great confidence building stepping stone. For those students that might be struggling with the imposter syndrome, this helps them to understand that, yeah, I can do real paid professional work in my target field. And that's will give them the confidence to apply for that longer term opportunity, that internship, that full-time role. Now for companies, it's an eclectic mix of reasons as well. Big reason that we're hearing is that yes, it's easy. Yes, it's low commitment. And by that, I mean the companies that are doing micro internships, many of them already have robust internship programs. This doesn't compete with that. This adds on to that. This deepens their talent pipeline so that those students, again, that can't come to their various career events, they're still able to engage them. Companies like that it's on demand, that it's flexible. So a lot of the same benefits for the students also mirror what the companies enjoy. They like that it's a cost-effective strategy as well, something that they can do where the money mostly goes to the students, which again, companies like, because for the students, it's kind of like paying them to do an interview. And if companies are saying that they really value students from underrepresented backgrounds, that they really want to help support their brand recognition and want to make sure that the reputation of their company is as pristine and paramount and on top of mind, this is a great resource for them because this is allowing them to get that nice brand equity, essentially selling it as, hey, you're getting paid to enter into our talent pipeline. That's how much of a value we place on our early career hires. And they're building their talent pipeline with micro internships as early as their freshman year, because we see students successfully complete micro internships as first year students and are being selected as often as the juniors and seniors in many cases and competing against these juniors and seniors. And we're seeing them also using them as brand building opportunities. Campus ambassadors make great micro internships. We're seeing them as ways to access populations that they may otherwise have missed, such as students from specific demographics, students from specific majors, specific schools. And we also are seeing them as, when we say job auditions, aligning to their full-time roles. So to give you a specific example, when we talk to companies, this is what our team does. We'll ask them point blank, what are you hiring for? And so for this particular example, they're looking for somebody who knows and is going to be a data marketer, marketing department and the data person. And we'll dissect that job description and then unbundle it to identify projects that can help these organizations understand how that micro internship can audition that student for those open full-time roles. So in this example here, this data marketer, first line of the job description, it says gathering and analyzing and reporting marketing data. Great. What's a project that could help a company see if a student can do that? Yeah, you can see it on a resume, but really, let's put them to work. Let's actually see that student in action. And so what we see this projects turn into is something like a data cleanup and visualization project, where they'll give students some data about topics that pertain to whatever it is that their industry or what may be top of mind. It might be open source data. We have students actually doing a project right now tied to one of our funded programs where they're looking at open source Department of Labor data and doing some data analytics around that. But this is helping, it's more than just the project itself, it's helping the company understand what is the student's attention to detail, how effectively are they able to communicate and align what it is that the company is looking for with the final deliverable of the project. And you can see a couple of other examples there, but we are doing that with the company. This isn't something that you need to have expertise on. Send them our way, and we'll be happy to talk through what sorts of projects make sense given what it is that the company is looking for. And I also want to share the impact on the company side. As we talked about the students with the NACE competencies, this is what we're seeing from companies. We're hearing that students who are completing micro internships are far more likely to be professionally employed upon graduation, but that also they're more likely to stay in their open full-time roles for over a year or more. You can see in that middle bar chart, 98.1% of students who've completed micro internships stay with their employer for at least a year. How come? Why? Well, when we dissect it with the students, it's because they have more data. They understand what is a good fit for me. They do projects, lots of different projects with lots of different organizations, so that when it comes time to make that final decision of, okay, I want to be a blah, blah, blah with whatever company, great. Now they have more data to understand what is the right fit for me as that student. And for companies who are using micro internships at scale, and by that, I mean they're not just hiring for one project, but hiring 10, 20, 100 micro interns and making this an integral part of their recruiting strategy. They're also receiving and enjoying some really great cost benefits as well. And so you can see some examples there and lots of great data there, but I did want to highlight this from their perspective. So why share micro internships with your employers? Well, for that, I'm going to take a breath and turn the table over to my colleague Danielle to talk a little bit more about, you've heard the data, you've seen the reporting, why? And why would this be important? So Danielle, let's take it from here.
Hello, everyone. Excited to be connecting with you today. So as far as why you should do this, there are a lot of really great outcomes that can come from sharing this with your employers. We've already talked about how it benefits your students, how it benefits your employers, but we also want to highlight that this really helps you and your goals as well. So to get into the specifics, a few concrete ways this can support your efforts is one, enhancing employer involvement in your existing activities. So if you're thinking about your career fairs, your networking nights, your information sessions, those types of things, we've all had the experience, where we've had a student come to one of these events and maybe the employer didn't quite know how to engage with them, or maybe they were a first and second year student and the company didn't really have opportunities for them at that point, something along those lines. Micro internships give them something specific to talk about. They can do these at any time of year, and they're great for engaging those students early. So it's a wonderful way, not only for these employers to have something specific to talk to your students about, but also for the employers to have after the event to say, look at all these candidates we have for this micro internship. This is something we can do to start engaging this talent now. Another is a great way to deepen relationships with existing employer partners. So you may have had some folks that at one point were really invested in recruiting from your institution. Maybe they've fallen off a little bit. Maybe their traditional methods aren't working. Students evolve. We all need to evolve too. This is a way for them to do something fresh, something new, and really reinvigorate that relationship, not only with your students, but also with you as an institution they recruit from. And finally, for those employers that you feel really should be engaging your students, but maybe aren't taking the other actions you want them to, maybe they're not registering for the fairs, maybe they're not coming on campus, and they're saying maybe they just don't have the time or the budget. This is a great way to engage those folks in a way that is low risk, in a way that is cost effective, to allow them to engage your students and see the talent that you have at your institution and why they should perhaps be engaging in other ways. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to steal screen sharing from you, if that's okay. We've talked about the how of or the why of micro internships, why it benefits you, why it benefits your students, why it benefits your employers. Now I want to talk a little bit about the how. So these are the specific things that you can do that are going to support an awareness of micro internships amongst your employers and lead to more project engagement. So we're going to get into each one of these topics. First is building awareness of micro internships as a recruiting tool. So we've already highlighted what these are, that they can be used in a few different ways, but just to reiterate again, the magic of micro internships is when companies are using these as a way not just to get things done, but more importantly, as a way to engage talent that they might otherwise not be engaging currently, use it as a pipeline towards those longer term opportunities. So some of the ways that you can make your employers aware of micro internships as that recruiting tool is number one, an employer-focused landing page. So this is a page that you can share with your employers, that you can link to in a variety of places, that explains to them, this is what micro internships are, this is how they benefit you, and this is why you should be posting these projects for our students. So this is an element of our Parker Dewey Partnership. I imagine most of you on the call are partners today, but if you are not, this is a great time to set up partnership. We have a couple of different options. We'll highlight some of the other ones, but our first one is a basic no-cost option. And this landing page is included in every single one of those options. So with that in mind, just want to walk you through what is on this page. Here's an example from one of our newer partners, Radford University, and it explains, again, to your employers what micro internships are. It gives them some proof that they can link to about how this can help them accomplish recruiting goals. And this link right here goes to our student sentiment survey, where students have said, This is a way that we want to engage, that we want to learn about new employers, that we want to learn about potential career paths. It lets your employers know what they can expect, that it's easy to create their account. There's no cost or obligation. They're only going to receive an invoice once they select a micro intern. Reminders that these need to be short-term professional projects and that we are handling all the admin. We're the employer of record, taking care of all that payroll information, processing all that good stuff. It also gives your employers examples of different projects that they can post for your students. They're not limited to these templates. They're also welcome to post a custom project, and we have a guide for doing so. And if they want to learn more, they're welcome to come to one of our webinar demonstrations, get some testimonials, and have those frequently asked questions answered. And if they still have questions, they're welcome to connect with us directly. We are always happy to engage with employers, help understand their unique needs, and then get some micro internship ideas flowing that are going to address those unique challenges. So if you request one of these landing pages, and we're going to have a poll at the end, so if this is of interest to you, make sure you hang out to the end and request that you want one. You should really spread this widely. So one of the places you should share this is your employer-facing webpage. We have introductory language for you to share. If you have email responses that you already have in place for recruiters who've said they're interested in recruiting from your institution, include information about micro internships in this landing page there. If you have presentations you regularly give to recruiters, this page link should be included in those. And basically, anywhere else that recruiters might be looking for resources or information about how to engage with your students. We also have a new resource, our partner checklist. If you haven't already, we also highly encourage you to take a look at this checklist and keep track of all of those places where you are putting your link. So you can see a lot of those reiterated, those email responses, all those things. From this page that is linked to, you're also able to make an editable copy so you can keep track of all the places that you've shared this link. We encourage you to do that, especially since you've set up partnership if you've had this page, because doing the must-dos on that list are a requirement to be able to request your annual student engagement data. So that is the employer-focused landing page. Again, you can have one of these made at no cost if you establish Parker Dewey Partnership. Some of you may be thinking, hey, I'm already a Parker Dewey partner. I don't remember a page that looks quite like this. This is a little bit of a newer version of our employer landing page. You may have a page that is designed to engage employers, but might be in a little bit of an older format. So if you would like to get that page updated, then at the end, please select that you would like to get one of these pages. We can get that updated for you, lickety-split. Another resource we recommend having handy, so you can highlight this as a recruiting tool, is where micro internships fit in for employers. Because we get it. These employers are busy, they have metrics they have to hit, you have metrics you have to hit, and sometimes everyone's thinking, well, where exactly do micro internships fit in? Maybe this isn't something that you're already highlighting heavily. Oh, I see someone in the chat saying that Whitman already got their new page and they've got compliments about it. Perfect. We love to see real life examples. So if you are one of those folks that's thinking, I need to be able to explain quickly, when employers ask me, where does this fit in? This is a great resource to have. So when an employer says to you, and if Kristen didn't already highlight, our whole team used to work in career services before we joined Parker Dewey. So I know these are things I used to hear. I want to build my brand with your students, or I want to reach different demographics, or I need to show that when I'm coming to a career fair, it's having immediate impact. I want to reach students earlier. I have a limited budget, all these things. This flyer explains how micro internships can help address those challenges. Again, they're not designed to replace traditional internships or co-ops or anything else you may already be doing. They're designed to act as a pipeline to more of those longer-term opportunities. And with real quotes from students, this also highlights that this is genuinely appealing to them, it's accessible to them, and it works. And if you get some of those common questions, this also covers those details. How does it work? What does it cost? All those good things. And if you want to customize this flyer, that link from the slides, and you're going to get those afterwards, also takes you to our Canva page. So you are able to easily hop in, make a copy of that page. You can add your logo. You can add the QR code to your company specific landing page, that one we just went over. So it's very easy for you to customize for your needs as well. Another thing that you might just want to bookmark or have at the ready is some employer success stories. So if you're going to share a flyer, I personally recommend that Where Micro Internships Fit flyer, but these testimonials can also be very helpful if you have a company who really wants to see How have folks done this before? How are other folks using micro internships? So as you can see, we've got small companies who are just starting up. We've also got large companies who are using this as a recruiting tool. So this is a really great way to highlight to whatever size of company, whatever industry of company you're working with, that micro internships can be used in a wide variety of ways. Another option to really highlight micro internships as a recruiting tool, and this is something that we are very excited to share because it's relatively new, is Parker Dewey Plus. So this is a premium level of partnership that allows you access to data that historically has not been available with our basic level partnerships. Now, with this $2,000 a year subscription, something you're going to be able to do is log in on demand and see which employers are interested in our students. So for example, from that company-facing landing page that we highlighted earlier, if a company creates an account, even if they haven't posted a micro internship yet, you're going to see that information in your Parker Dewey Plus dashboard, and you know that that's a company that you can start working on building a relationship with, helping them get over that finish line to start posting projects and even begin engaging with your students in additional ways. If a company does post a project exclusively for your institution, you're able to see that on demand with Parker Dewey Plus. And if they post a project for multiple institutions, maybe a few that are in your geographical area, you'll be able to see that as a featured project as well. In short, Parker Dewey Plus just gives you a much better view of how employers are using the tool and which ones are particularly interested in recruiting your students. With the cost of that $2,000 a year subscription also comes the coverage for a micro intern of your own. So one of your own students will be paid $360 to help you spread the word about micro internships, both to their peers as well as to employers. And what we've done to make this easy is we've created a whole checklist of tasks that a student could do to help you spread the word. So things like updating some of the flyers in the student-facing toolkit, also things like creating a video explaining, this is why this is appealing to me. This is why employers should be using this to engage me and my peers. And then those are things that you can put on LinkedIn that they can share and tag employers. Basically, it's designed to make it easy for this word to get out without that burden falling entirely on you. Something else a lot of folks are appreciating is you can download an annual impact report at any time that is going to show you over the past 12 months which of your students have engaged in micro internships, as well as which of those have created accounts. Something we are very proud of at Parker Dewey is the fact that over 80% of those who are selected for projects, not just using the platform, but who are selected for projects, come from historically underrepresented populations in the workplace. So that is something you are able to, again, on demand, see at any time with these impact reports. So when those companies come to you and say, I really want to engage talent from different demographics, I came to your career fair and I made some great connections, but I was hoping to see some more students from XYZ demographic, you're able to take this information and say to that employer, this is a great way to go about reaching those students because we can already see they are on this platform and already having success. So if you're interested in learning more about Parker Dewey Plus, this is the resource I'm putting in the chat. You can see a recap from a webinar that goes a little bit more in depth, see a flyer, but just something to consider as everyone's looking ahead in their budgets. Something else to consider when really making sure that you're highlighting this as a recruiting program or a recruiting tool is to maybe do a Parker Dewey program. So if you are not familiar with Parker Dewey programs, essentially you get to decide what are our goals as an institution and what type of micro internships are going to allow us to achieve those goals. So for example, we have had schools who've said, we have alumni who are just a fantastic network. They're going to have project needs that are going to be of interest to our current students. So we are going to fund projects for our alumni, only they can use the funds, and the results are exclusively available to our students. We've had other schools who maybe knew their students were interested in nonprofits or government organizations. So again, they said with their line of funding, this is only going to be available to those organizations. And again, since the school was funding the program, the resulting opportunities were only available to their students. So this is a really exciting opportunity if you have a line of funding, whether that is a grant that you have secured, a donation, anything along those lines, to be able to use that to say, this is opportunities we're going to create that are only going to be able to be seen, applied for, and secured by students from our institution. So if this is something of interest to you, we can put the link to this in the chat. You can see some of those examples if you scroll down that I was talking about earlier. And if you want to have a conversation, you can always check out a webinar overview with even more details, but we also encourage you to connect with us directly. I mentioned that poll at the end before. Interest in a program is also something that you can highlight in that poll, so we encourage you to keep an eye out for that as well. I see we've got a question in the chat. Do you have specific language for alumni that may be hiring that's a little different than messages sent to employers? Yes, Nadine, we do. That is going to be in our marketing toolkit. And I love that you're already thinking ahead. That one's a little bit closer to the end of the presentation, but it is coming. So we have covered some different ways that it's just best practices to have ready to share. These are micro internships. They're a great recruiting tool. This is how you become aware of them. But we also invite you to be a little bit more proactive in terms of engaging us with your employers and vice versa. So the next piece we recommend is inviting us to connect with your employers at events that you may already be hosting. So to dig in a little bit deeper into some things we've seen schools have that have been successful. Oh, I see another question in the chat. Do you have a PDF of the employer landing page information? Great question. I'm going to go ahead and answer this real quickly before I talk about employer events. We typically recommend the landing page is going to be the best way to share information. That stated, we do have a marketing toolkit. I'll go ahead and jump ahead to the toolkit that has resources in all sorts of different formats. So if you're looking for a PDF, for example, you can hit flyers. If you're looking for an employer-facing flyer, you can hit that. You'll jump into this category and it's going to show you a variety of different PDFs. So depending on what employer you're working with or what their needs are, you can select something to share. Again, typically that landing page, because it has such a wide range of resources, is going to be your best first defense. But if you're looking for something specific, that marketing toolkit is going to be what you're looking for. And as Nadine is highlighting, it is filled with all the things. So please feel free to check that toolkit out. All right, so inviting us to your employer events. So here you can see examples of just a few schools or a few events that folks have invited us to where they already have employers coming, and then they have Parker Dewey do a brief presentation as part of that event. So if you are having an event where you're having employers come to learn about recruiting options and someone can be virtually brought in, we would love to have a few minutes to share with your employers how this recruiting tool works. If you are having an information session or maybe an employer appreciation event and there's time for a presentation, that's another great opportunity to invite Parker Dewey. So if you are looking ahead at your calendar and you have something like that on the radar, email schools@parkerdewey.com. I have just put that link in the chat and say, hey, Parker Dewey, do you have time? Would you be able to come? The answer is almost assuredly, if we have the time, going to be yes. We would love to directly share this with your employers. Oh, we have got action in the chat and I love it. How much luck do student athletes have with micro internships? Love this question, especially as a former student athlete myself. This is particularly advantageous for them because they have busy schedules. They don't always have time for a traditional internship, but they're still looking for experience. And they often have great luck because on the employer side of things, they love recruiting student athletes. They already know that they know how to manage their time. They know that they can work as a team. They know that they can take direction. So much so that when companies post micro internships, there's even a place there where they can put in if they exclusively want that project to be available to a student athlete. And on the flip side, when you're sharing this with your student athletes, encourage them to put on their side that they are looking to engage or that they are a student athlete so they can see those resulting opportunities. So the short answer is yes. Make sure you encourage your students to add student athlete in the affiliation section of their profile. All right. Oh, and Kristen's adding some more information about student athlete programs in the chat as well. Another place that you might want to consider inviting Parker Dewey to connect with your employers or your partners is if you have connections with chambers of commerce or workforce development meetings. We know from working in higher ed ourselves, there are often some really valuable, really great relationships between these workforce organizations and local institutions. If you have such a relationship and there's an opportunity for us to give a presentation to that Department of Commerce or that workforce development org, please invite us in. These local organizations especially often really value the opportunity to engage students from your institution in a way that is going to allow them to access even more of the talent that's there. As someone who in college themselves, did everything they were told, went to the career fair, engaged local employers, even though they were local, I ended up getting an unpaid internship offer 40 minutes away. And I can tell you that was something that I wasn't able to do. I didn't have a car. So for those workforce orgs that are saying, we want to engage your students, we want to engage local talent, but maybe we want to do it in a way that's still more accessible to them. We know they're here, but we want to allow even those students who might not have a car or might not have access to public transportation. This is a great way for those organizations to engage local talent. We also have some examples. Again, y'all are going to get these slides afterwards, but Greater Akron Chamber, for example, even said, we love this. We are going to cover the cost for our member organizations to post their first micro internship. The Kansas Department of Commerce has also connected with other folks in Kansas to say, hey, we want to address the issue of brain drain in our state. And they are actually funding for any Kansas-based organization to engage micro interns from Kansas-based public schools, and they're covering the costs. And when I say they, I mean the Department of Commerce and a combination of other foundations are making it so these companies are connecting with this talent, they're building those pipelines, but a third party is covering it. So just some other food for thought as you consider who else you might want to share micro internships with or invite us to present to. I see another great question. Are all of your micro internships remote? The vast majority. Now, every once in a while, there's a project that just by its nature needs to be in person. So for example, if a company is doing a new line of product, they might want a micro intern to photograph that product. And that is something you obviously can't do unless you're physically with the product. So that's an example of a project we would say that makes sense to do in person. But if at all possible, we highly encourage for companies to get creative and post these projects as remote opportunities. Again, it just helps with the accessibility of that student who may in reality only be a few miles away, might be great talent, but just may not have access to transportation. So another resource that we encourage you to connect us to are if you have entrepreneurship or small business centers. These folks are often building their businesses from the ground up. They maybe don't have the time or the funding to do a full semester traditional internship. If you're doing an internship right, as most of you know, that's a little bit of a commitment, and they just may not have the ability to make that at this point. But what they do have are a lot of small specific projects that would be perfect for your students as micro internships. So this is another great resource. If your campus has an on-campus entrepreneurship center, or if you have connections with another local resource that's similar, please introduce us, have us to present to them. We'd love for those entrepreneurs and small businesses to understand how this can benefit them as well. Okay, so now we are moving on to our next section. We have talked about ways that you can invite us to connect with your employers, things that you may already be a part of or are already going on. Now we want to talk about some ways that you can invite your employers to connect directly with us. And this is where the value of our partnerships really comes in. This is why we get so excited to host this employer engagement webinar, because you all really are the key to so many fantastic employer relationships that allow us to make them aware of this as a recruiting tool and build new opportunities for your students. So before we dig into this section, just want to reiterate again how much we appreciate your efforts in engaging employers and connecting them with Parker Dewey. So with that, let's get into the weeds. One of the easiest ways to, at scale, make your employers more familiar with micro internships is to host a webinar. And when I say host, I use the term a little bit loosely. You're hosting it in name, but we are actually doing all the setup for you. So if you want to host a webinar specifically for your employers and alumni, we will set up the registration page. Here's an example of one we've got coming up for University of Denver. We will set up the Zoom event. We will set up the promotional materials. We will do the presentation itself. All we ask from our partners who are interested in hosting a webinar is that you commit to sending the invitation, again, the one that we create for you, out to at least 1,000 employer contacts. We also highly recommend making sure that companies of scale are in that list of employer contacts, because companies that are a little bit larger, that tend to have higher recruiting needs, are also those, because they have those needs at scale, that are more likely to end up posting micro internships in larger quantities. And at the end of the day, our goal is to create more accessible opportunities for your students. So the more you can engage those larger employers, the better the outcomes tend to be. So I've mentioned that poll that's coming at the end a couple of times. At the end, if you are interested in engaging students or engaging employers by inviting them to a webinar and hosting them with your name, we would love for you to indicate that in the poll as well. All right, so next option would be to invite employers to connect directly with us in the Parker Dewey team. And I also want to take an opportunity to acknowledge that these options are not, exclusive to one another. You can do multiple tactics to engage employers. So where you might use this tactic is if you have employers that have kind of unique needs when it comes to your students or when it comes to their recruiting goals. In those cases, a one-on-one conversation might be more beneficial to help us help them brainstorm project ideas that are relevant to their industry, brainstorm timelines, those types of things. So if you have employers that, just need a little bit more support because they're in a unique situation, those might be the ones that you want to invite to connect with Parker Dewey directly. In this case, we're happy to have one-on-one conversations, help them brainstorm, and just really help them get started. You will also find, again, in these slides, we have an email template, so you don't have to think about how to introduce this. This gives you all the information you need. Again, encourages you to link to that employer-facing link that you're going to hopefully make if you're engaging your employers or already have, and highlight how this is going to help them with a variety of different needs. So next up, if you do not have the capacity to host an individual webinar for your institution, but you still want to do things at a little bit larger scale, another resource that you have available to you is to invite your employers to our monthly overview webinars. These are very straightforward 30-minute sessions where we explain to your employers, this is what micro internships are, this is how they work, examples of different projects you can do, and we show them just how easy it is to get started. So it's great to share your link with employers. It's great to make them aware of micro internships as a resource, but by inviting them to this webinar, you give them that little extra step to really understand, maybe they're listening in while they're doing other things, but to really understand, oh, this can benefit me in ways I didn't think of before. This can help me build my pipeline. This can help me engage new demographics. It's actually a lot more than just a project, which is a preconceived notion that some of your employers might have about the micro internship concept. So doing things like hosting these webinars really helps them overcome it. So we have resources to make it easy for you to share this webinar with folks. Whether you want to send an email template, email is a vital part of any engagement strategy, so that's why we have templates ready for you. If you have a regularly scheduled employer newsletter, that's a great option. And I also want to highlight too, the folks in this room are probably employer facing. So if you want to register yourself, even though you're not planning to use it as a tool for yourself, but you want to see what the employer message is directly, you are welcome to join. That stated, we do also have some schools who use micro interns themselves. University of California, Irvine is a great example. Every year around their big give time, they actually hire micro interns in bulk. So they have a number of them that get assigned to different departments, and then those micro interns help them get the word out about the fundraising efforts in a way that is unique to the goals and the benefits of that specific department. And they have just seen fantastic outcomes as a result. So just wanted to highlight that you are welcome to come to these events, whether you just want to see the message to employers or whether you're maybe considering posting a micro intern for your students yourself. I also want to acknowledge that I do see the hand in the participants. We're going to make time for audible questions at the end, but if you have something in the meantime, please feel free to put that in the chat. I see a question, where can we find dates for these webinars? Fantastic question. So if you go to any of these resources that you're going to see, you'll be able to click in. So I'm just going to go into the register yourself. This is always going to show you the next event. Now, if you're planning to think a little bit farther ahead, then I'm going to refer you back to this marketing toolkit. And if you haven't gotten it yet, here is that link again. So you are able to see in these launch and best practices, and this is brand new content that we just organized for y'all. So I love that it was asked about. You can go to these Parker Dewey events. And one of the links you're going to see is the one Kristen already put in the chat. So you're going to be able to see all of these different events. You can click on in them. You can see the date for the next one. But if you are thinking a little bit farther ahead, that's where you can go to this Career Launcher LinkedIn page. And that's where we put events a little bit farther out. So you can see here, we've got the employer webinar, Introduction to Micro Internships. We've also got our Career Launcher FAQ webinars, but we put the ones all the way through to the end of the year. So it's a little bit of a shorter list right now. I'm hoping to get 2025 dates in here ASAP. So if you want to check that out, there is that link to our Career Launcher LinkedIn page, which we're going to talk a little bit more about here in just a second. So you already saw on that page, there are also some other Parker Dewey events you might want to consider inviting your employers to. We do state of campus recruiting webinars. We also highlight how micro internships help employers engage folks from target demographics. We don't have specific dates upcoming for those right now, but it's a good idea just to keep an eye out. And one of the ways you can keep an eye out is that page that I just shared, the LinkedIn page, but also at the beginning of every month, we're sending you an email. If you are a Parker Dewey point of contact, letting you know what events are happening this month and on what days. So keep an eye out for those emails. If you'd like to receive them, but don't think you currently are, please reach out to schools@parkerdewey.com to be added to the list. Now, something that is a little bit more of a unique event, but we do have a date for, is this Projects as Pathways to Candidate Insights. This is a great one to invite your employers to, again, to help them understand this isn't just getting something done. That's happening. But more than that, it's a way to assess if a student or recent graduate is going to be a good fit for a longer term goal. So when you get these slides afterwards, check out this registration link. If you think this is something that your students or your employers rather would be interested in, please share this. And here's the link to that as well. Projects as Pathways. It is now in the chat. All right. So we have covered, just to reiterate, making sure you have the resources to share, the landing pages, the flyers, those things, inviting us to events that you're already a part of or hosting, connecting us with your chambers of commerce, having us come to an on-campus employer event virtually is how we typically engage. But even if you have other folks in person, we are always happy to present virtually. We've talked about how you can invite your employers to connect with us with our regularly scheduled events or by hosting your own webinar exclusively for your employers and alumni. Reminder about that option, by the way, since that's your audience, we also make sure we make it very clear how they can post projects exclusively for your students. So keep that in mind if that's something you're particularly interested in. Now we've covered all those other areas, I want to talk about just some best practices to do on a regular basis. So in addition to those monthly emails, we're going to tell you these are the events that are happening this month. Something else you will receive if you are a Parker Dewey point of contact is monthly content. So essentially every month we're sending you an email. Typically we send it about the 20th so you can think ahead to the next month and saying this is content that we recommend sharing with your students and with your employers for the coming month. Now, if you are not currently receiving these emails or if you're just missing them in your inbox, we also have a direct link where you can check out this content. So that link is also in the chat. Again, I know I'm hitting you with a lot of links in the chat. These will also all be in the slides afterwards. So if that's how your brain better organizes, you are happy to check them out that way. But you'll see if we publish, for example, new success stories, and you think that's going to be inspiring to your students, you can access those. But if you're looking specifically for content, you're going to want to look for an image like this one, and it's going to show you the date. So if we click in, for example, for November content, we have heard from a lot of you that you are in the process of rearranging, updating, totally redoing your websites. So what we wanted to highlight is here is how you can highlight micro internships very quickly, do an introduction on your website. So we've given you an image, we've given you a little blurb. We encourage you to link them to your employer-facing link. So that way you have this resource as a best practice when you're redoing that website to introduce this to your employers. We also give you resources for students. And since we've got a little bit of time left in the month, whenever we're sending this to you, we also send you the content that we recommended for the month we're currently in. So we just finished up October. We sent this out at the end of October for folks thinking about November, but you can see sometimes our content, is very on theme for the month. I personally am very much a spooky Halloween lover. So we had our content for employers as well as our content for students. And we gave you a variety of ways to share it, whether it's an email, LinkedIn, an Instagram post, or if you just wanted to use the images and the recommended captions to create your own post from scratch. So we highly recommend keeping an eye out for this monthly content because it is going to highlight resources and information that are going to be salient to your employers at that time of year. Something else that you all get to see that has not been put out yet, so this is one of the benefits of coming to this webinar, y'all are getting a preview, is our December employer content. So something that is important to remember about micro internships, and one of the ways they differ from traditional internships, is your employers don't have to plan as far ahead. They don't have to have a whole semester's work for the fall or the spring or the summer. Micro internships can be posted at any time of year, specific to whatever their project needs are at this time. And that means that they are a great way for employers to recruit and nurture and keep relationships strong throughout the year when other recruiting methods may not be as salient. So what we have done, and I can't tell you how new this is fresh off the press, folks, is we have created a 2025 employer engagement calendar that we encourage you to share with your employers so they can start thinking about in the different quarters of the year how they can use micro internships. So in quarter one, they're laying the foundation, they're engaging talent early. Quarter two, they know that internships are coming up. This is a way to build interest. This is a way to audition. And it's a way, if they forgot to do those other things or plan for the traditional internship, to get summer support without having to say, whoops, I just missed my window. As they get ready for quarter three, this is how they can get ready for fall recruitment. Do some campus engagement, hire a micro intern as a student ambassador, use them to assist with some recruitment strategy projects. And then quarter four, we're in it, folks. We all know that there are lots of things, even for us, that we are trying to handle in quarter four and wrap up before the end of the year. Same goes for employers. So this is a great way for them to use micro internships to get some support on those projects, again, while simultaneously seeing, are these students that we're engaging and the skills that they're demonstrating a good fit for our longer term roles? So that is going to be coming out in a couple of weeks, officially via email. But again, you all, by nature of being here today, get a little bit of a preview. That link is also in the chat. Now, something that we aren't going to have in this coming months, but we wanted to highlight just because it's good for y'all to plan a little bit ahead if you're interested in this option, is highlighting how micro internships can be incorporated into career fairs. So earlier, when we talked about why you should share this with your students, or why you should share this with your employers rather, is because it gives them a way to engage in career fairs, to demonstrate the value of those career fairs, to really reinvigorate that engagement in things they're already doing with your institution. So if you are interested in highlighting this to your employers, and we hope that we encourage you to do so, we have a resource where they can learn more about how they can supercharge career fairs with micro internships. And we have language that we encourage you to include in your career fair invitations, in your reminders to registered employers, all those good things that highlights how they can use this and how to get started. So we know everyone has their own career fair schedule. They tend to happen around the same times, but as you're planning ahead, because again, we come from career services, we know how much planning these events take. Think about how you can highlight this to your employers to make their engagement in those fairs even more valuable. Something else that we've seen some partners do is intentionally incorporate maybe a micro internship or two into their sponsorship packages. So if you're whether it's gold level, silver level, first level, whatever kind of language you're using, depending on the different levels, they might have multiple micro internships included in the cost of career fair registration. So this is going to benefit you in a few different ways. It also is engaging for the employers because they know before they even set foot on campus as part of their registration, they are getting a way to build relationships with your students. So if you are interested in those options, please do not hesitate to reach out. We are always happy to discuss and highlight how we can incorporate these things in. Now, I know throughout this presentation, I've been making reference to a poll that was going to be coming at the end. I also want to highlight real quickly that poll is now launched. So for all of those options we've discussed throughout, requesting or updating your landing page, hosting a webinar, inviting your employers to meet one-on-one, inviting us to present, or incorporating this into your career fairs, we have options in the chat, not in the chat, in the poll. So while we wrap up the presentation, I just encourage you to reflect on some of those things we shared. If there was something that caught your interest and you went, oh, but I'm hearing a lot of things in this webinar, and you're like, I need to remember exactly what I was thinking, looking at that poll is now the time to refresh your memory. Let us know which of these things you're interested in. Whatever you're interested in, we will follow up after the webinar. Now, as promised, Parker Dewey LinkedIn pages. This is another great place to go for timely content. Now, some of you may have noticed we actually have two LinkedIn pages with Parker Dewey. One is our standard Parker Dewey LinkedIn page, and this is the page where you are typically going to find employer-facing content. So this is where we highlight things like our student sentiment survey, how students want to be recruited, those upcoming events for employers, other resources that employers are really going to resonate with. So we encourage you to give this a follow. Here's the employer page. And if you are employer facing, this is where you want to keep an eye out for content that you might want to share and maybe tag some of your employers in. So it's taken just a little bit second to load with LinkedIn right now, but when it does, you'll be able to see examples of posts that your employers, that's not true, LinkedIn's struggling a little bit, that your employers may really find value from. On the flip side of things, we also have a student-facing LinkedIn page. Even if you're an only employer-facing point of contact, this might be a nice page to follow just so you can see examples of different success stories that we've shared for students, reminders about upcoming events for them, perspectives of those who have completed micro internships. So it's just a nice option to be able to see both sides of things. But especially for today's purpose, this is an employer engagement webinar. We really encourage you to follow that employer-facing one. And we've already covered this, so the timing is good. But if you are looking for something specific, if you're like, okay, we covered a lot of things and I'm interested in a few of them, but I want to know if there's a PDF, or I want to know if there's a presentation, or I want to know if there's a digital monitor template or anything like that, our marketing toolkit, there's a pretty good chance it's going to be in there. So again, when you're reviewing these slides later, that would be a good link to bookmark. There is lots of resource, as was highlighted by one of our partners in the chat, in that toolkit. And to the question earlier, do we have some content specifically for faculty and alumni? We sure do. And that is something else that is going to be found in that toolkit. You'll be able to see, let's see if I can highlight here real quick, in the marketing toolkit. Whoop, there we go. You can actually filter for alumni, and you are able to see whether there are alumni-focused guides, alumni-focused emails. So these are things in many ways that have the same base message as those you're going to show to employers, but maybe highlight a little bit more, hey, this is a great way to give back to someone from your alma mater. This is a great way to engage a student who is in a position that you were once in and is trying to build experience. On the faculty side of things, we also have a faculty launch toolkit. This includes an email that you are encouraged to send to share with folks, to let them know about micro internships so they can share it in your classes. And we also do a webinar, usually once a semester, for that wider audience. So this is for your faculty, your coaches, your advisors, your deans, anyone who would benefit from understanding what these are and how they benefit your students and employers alike. So we encourage you especially to send that information about micro internships to your wider institutional staff around the time that we do these webinars, so you can encourage them to attend. We also have some tips for engaging alumni. I kind of already highlighted these in the toolkit, but if you have alumni board or council meetings, if you have alumni newsletters, again, that content in the toolkit is going to be helpful. And these can be a great source of projects because these are professionals that graduated from the programs your students are currently in. And accordingly, they tend to have project needs that are really going to be right up your current students' alleys. And with that, folks, we have come to the last slide. I mentioned it before, but we do have a partner checklist that shares lots of these resources. But this is, if you're gonna, review one thing, this has this has links to all that content. So if you want to host your own webinar, you want a reminder about how that works, you click on that. If you want to invite us to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, click on that. It reminds you that Schools at Parker Dewey is the place that you want to go. So I hope that this has been helpful. I know we covered a lot in this session, but hopefully along the way you heard some things that really resonate or maybe you want to do. It looks like just over half of you have filled out that poll at this point. So really encourage you, if you haven't already, to take a look at that poll. It highlights a lot of the things that we covered today, really the primary ones that we're happy to help you engage in, and let us know which of those options interest you.